Hello friends, I hope you're doing well. My name is Maivi. Welcome back to my channel where I am doing the challenge of reading through the long list for the Climate Fiction Prize. The idea of this channel is basically to look at the books not just from a literary perspective but also from an environmental climate perspective. And myself, an environmental engineer, I'm a professional in the field of environment and climate change. So my role here is to basically do a review of these books from a literary perspective, but also reflecting on what they're bringing to the conversation when we're talking about climate change. So this is week number 2 for me of this channel, and I also reviewed the first book that I read, which was Orbital. You can go and watch the video that has been uploaded already. I'm gonna link here, I think, and down below in the description box. But now I am halfway through my second book, which is The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But yeah, so far I just read half of the book. I'm not going to give any spoilers, of course, but I do want to talk so far, kind of vlog my experience of reading it and what my first impressions are. So what is this book about? Basically, this book is set in the near future in which we have cracked time travel. And the government has created a new ministry, the Ministry of Time. And what they have done is they had this little project going on in which they have brought 5 people from the past, from different time periods of the past. They brought them to their present day London, and they have people assigned to those time travelers, which are called bridges. So the role of a bridge is basically to help the time traveler to adjust to present day on Earth. And the book is told from a first person perspective and from the perspective of one of the bridges. So it's a woman that, just as the author, she's half British, half Cambodian, and she has been assigned this time traveler called Gore, who is a survivor of the Franklin expedition in the Arctic, which I honestly didn't really know anything about. And basically she's helping him adjust and helping him navigate this new world, and basically learn all of the technology and try to make the most out of his time here. So as a book, as a story, my first impressions so far, having read half of the book, is it's medium to fast paced, I would say. It's not a slow read. It has really good dialogue, incredibly good dialogue. All these characters have very distinct voices, and it's incredibly well represented here. Even when they don't even say who is speaking, you know who is speaking because of the way that they speak. It reminds me a little bit to the series Ghosts, if you watch that, which is funny and fantastic. And talking about funny, this book also has a lot of humor. It has me laughing all the time when I'm reading it. And what I would also say is that so far is keeping the intrigue. There are things that are happening that our narrator doesn't know about. And as the book progresses, it becomes more and more obvious that there are things that are happening and we just don't know what they are. And I can't wait to know more because it is very intriguing. So far, if I have to say what this book brings to the conversation on climate change from a climate perspective, there's not a lot going on other than this book seems to be set not too far in the future, because there's things that are very relevant to present day, such as social media and Spotify, and I haven't seen like new technology that we would expect, like, I don't know, 100 years in the future. This book might take place, say, 20 years from now, tops. And even in such a short jump of time, we are already seeing a much warmer London. As someone who lives in London, and I know what the weather is like. In here, we're seeing a lot more heat. We're seeing heat waves that reach over 40 degrees normally in any summer. We have had that a few years ago where the temperature reached 41, and it was the first time ever in recorded history that London surpassed 40 degrees. So here we have that as a more common occurrence. We also have much more common occurrence of floods, like it happens very frequently and very intensely as well. But I think if there is one message that I would really like to focus on is the reference to climate migration. The first thing I would say is that the time travelers are taken as migrants because they haven't come here from a different place, but they did come here from a different time, and that makes them kind of time migrants. But from the moment that they arrive, it is decided that they are going to be called expats. And this is very interesting because it's specifically referring to the stigma that is associated with a lot of words and terminology that we use when we're talking about immigration and specifically migrants. So, as much as I am a climate change expert, I am also a migrant myself. So, I would really like to take a moment to talk about this because when I hear conversation about migration, I hear a lot of misconceptions and a lot of terms that are misused. And this is something that we need to get used to because with climate change, migration is set to increase more and more and more. So we will keep on seeing these phenomena all around the world. And the good thing is that I think that climate fiction has a pivotal role to play in this sense to teach us about other people's experiences. That's why I love books. That's what I take the most out of it, because I learn about other places and other experiences. So it helps us to build empathy. And there is a section in this book. This is actually a very good segue to it. There is a section in this book, a very little story. I hope I'm not giving away any spoilers. But there is a very little story here in which the protagonist is telling us that when she was a child, she was absolutely terrified of spiders. And at some point, there was this spider that arrived to the garden and put her spider web there in the garden. And she was so terrified that she didn't even dare to go to the garden. So her father took the decision to make up a story about that spider. Not so much a story actually as building a character out of the spider. So he invented, this backstory to the spider, saying that she had gone to university and she studied to become an architect, and that's how she managed to build these fantastic spider webs. And he gave her a very complex personality. He gave her a name, and basically what that story did with our main character is that she was still afraid of the spider, but she managed to get to a place of tolerance and respect and coexistence. She would observe the spider with a level of respect from the distance, and and just let it be, because it wasn't just this crawly, creepy animal. It was Mrs. Legs, and she's there, and she went to university, and she has her life. So it kind of humanized the spider. It made our main character see the spider and comprehend the spider in terms that were familiar to her. And I think that's very meta of this book. I don't know if I'm using that correctly because I'm obviously not Gen Z. I'm very much a millennial. But yeah, if what I'm trying to say is that I think that's exactly what climate fiction can help us do, and that's the role of climate fiction, to humanize, to empathize, to understand other human stories, and in the way that they are navigating a world with a degrading environment and changing climate. And this story right here is teaching us how fiction, can help us do that, can help us humanize and understand other experiences and look at them, maybe not as someone that is just like me, but someone with dignity that deserves my respect. Hello again. You might have noticed a change in my outfit. That's not me being a diva and pretending to be in an award ceremony, nothing like that. It's just that a few days have happened since I recorded that first part of the video. And since then, a couple of things have happened. The first thing is that I started to edit that first half of the video, and I'm going to just come clean here and say it. I kind of took a detour into the topic of migration and particularly climate migration, but within the wider context of what's going on at the moment. And I mentioned there the misuse of different terms when we're talking about this topic. And I felt on one hand that perhaps it went for a little bit too long as a commentary about this particular book, even though it is a topic that is referred to over and over in many occasions within this story. It is not actually the main point of the story. So I thought it was a little bit long as a commentary on this particular book. And the other thing is that since then, I finished reading the book that I was reading, and I just started to read a new one, the third one on the list for the Climate Fiction Prize. And that again is even more relevant to the topic of climate migration. And then I realized that actually many of these books might actually touch upon this very relevant topic. So what I decided to do is I cut that part out of this video, and I'm making a standalone video with it, which I'm going to link down below, because I do think it's very relevant. But I also think, again, it's going to be very relevant for many of these books. So that is going to be kind of a resource out there to touch on that specific topic and to refer back to whenever a book or a story requires so. So that's one of the things that happened. The other thing that happened is that I finished reading this book. And it was quite funny that I made that review halfway through it, because at that point, the book was something else, and then it changes quite drastically. The first half of this book is quite light and humorous and lively, and it basically addresses the experiences of these individuals as they try to adapt to this new reality in present London. However, halfway through, the story takes quite a dark turn, and some of the intrigue and the suspense that we saw for the first half of the book disappears and gives way to some realizations that are quite disturbing. So I can't actually say anything about this. I wanted to give you more of an overview and a commentary on climate change. The only thing I might say is that as the story progresses, climate change becomes more and more relevant, and even quite central to the last part of the book, of the story. But I can't really say anything at all, because whatever I say, it will constitute a major spoiler, and that is not my vibe at all. So yeah, I can't really say anything. My lips are sealed. The other thing I would like to add, which I don't know if I made it as clear as I could have in the first part of this video, is that something that I found absolutely fascinating is that the character of Graham Gore, this time traveler, that is one of the main characters of the story. It's based on an actual, real individual, someone that actually existed and who lost his life in what is known as the Franklin expedition. The Franklin expedition was an expedition that consisted of 2 ships that sailed towards the Arctic, and from my understanding, their purpose was to try and find a passage through North America, so through the north of Canada, to reach the Pacific Ocean. That's my understanding of what they were trying to do. They were exploring anyways. So this is an expedition that ended up tragically, where apparently both ships got stuck on ice, and none of the members of the expedition made it out alive of that adventure. And I also found out through this book that there is a museum in London, which is the Maritime Museum, that holds a permanent exhibition about the Franklin expedition. And they have there some paintings, and they have some of the things that were recovered when search and rescue parties went up there trying to look for them, and they found some evidence of what might have happened to them. So we kind of pieced together the story of what might have happened. So I took the opportunity this weekend to go to the Maritime Museum, and it was very, very fascinating. They also have a 10-minute talk, which when I went on Saturday, it was a Saturday, it was around 1 p.m. And apparently this is something that happens on a daily basis. But there was a talk there about a gentleman called James Fitzjames, which was also part of the expedition and which is also named in this book. So I enjoyed that very much, and I found that exhibition particularly interesting. Sometimes you go to museums and you see all sorts of little things that are just showcased there, and we don't always take the time to stop and look at them and understand where they come from. So having the background from this book, I think it was, it enhanced my experience that much more, to already have a background of what happened to these people. If you happen to be in London or to visit London anytime soon, I highly recommend you to go there, especially if you have read this book before. But if not, if that's not within your reach, if that's not accessible to you, I'm gonna leave here for you a few of the videos that I took, just for you to have a snippet of what that exhibition looks like. So thank you very much again for spending some time with me. If you enjoyed this type of content, please subscribe, which helps me a lot. And any comments, any likes, any shares of the video, if you will, it's gonna help me immensely. So thank you a lot, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.